On the third day from our arrival, I found a fleet opportunity of speaking to her alone. The moment we looked at one another, her quick instinct detected the thought in my mind before I could give it expression. With her customary energy and directness, she spoke at once, and spoke first. "You are thinking of that subject which was mentioned between us on the evening of your return from Hampshire," she said. "I've been expecting you to allude to it for some time past. There must be a change in our little household, Walter. We cannot go on much longer as we are now. I see it as plainly as you do, as plainly as Laura sees it, though she says nothing. How strangely the old times in Cumberland seem to have come back. You and I are together again, and the one subject of interest between us is Laura once more. I could almost fancy that this room is the summer house at Limmeridge, and that those waves beyond us are beaten on our seashore. I was guided by your advice in those past days," I said, "and now, Marian, with reliance tenfold greater, I will be guided by it again." She answered by pressing my hand. I saw that she was deeply touched by my reference to the past. We sat together near the window, and while I spoke and she listened, we looked at the glory of the sunlight shining on the majesty of the sea. "Whatever comes of this confidence between us," I said, "whether it ends happily or sorrowfully for me, Laura's interests will still be the interests of my life. When we leave this place, on whatever terms we leave it, my determination to wrest from Count Fosco the confession which I failed to obtain from his accomplice goes back with me to London, as certainly as I go back myself. Neither you nor I can tell how that man may turn on me if I bring him to bay. We know only by his own words and actions that he is capable of striking at me through Laura, without a moment's hesitation or a moment's remorse. In our present position, I have no claim on her which society sanctions, which the law allows, to strengthen me in resisting him, and in protecting her. This places me at a serious disadvantage. If I am to fight our cause with the Count, strong in the consciousness of Laura's safety, I must fight it for my wife. Do you agree to that, Marian, so far?" "To every word of it," she answered. "I will not plead out of my own heart," I went on. "I will not appeal to the love which has survived all changes and all shocks. I will rest my only vindication of myself for thinking of her and speaking of her as my wife on what I have just said. If the only chance of forcing a confession from the Count is, as I believe it to be, the last chance left of publicly establishing the fact of Laura's existence, the least selfish reason that I can advance for our marriage is recognized by us both. But I may be wrong in my conviction. Other means of achieving our purpose may be in our power, which are less uncertain and less dangerous. I have searched anxiously in my own mind for those means, and I have not found them. Have you?" "No, I have thought about it too, and thought in vain. In all likelihood," I said, "the same questions have occurred to you in considering this difficult subject which have occurred to me. Ought we to return with her to Limmeridge, now that she is like herself again, and trust to the recognition of her by the people of the village or by the children at the school? Ought we to appeal to the practical test of her handwriting? Suppose we did so. Suppose the recognition of her obtained, and the identity of the handwriting established. Would success in both those cases do more than supply an excellent foundation for a trial in a court of law? Would the recognition and the handwriting prove the identity to Mr. Fairley, and take her back to London, to Limmeridge House? Against the evidence of her aunt, against the evidence of the medical certificate, against the fact of the funeral and the fact of the inscription on the tomb, No, we can only hope to succeed and throw in a serious doubt on the assertion of her death, a doubt which nothing short of a legal inquiry can settle. I will assume that we possess, which we have certainly not got, money enough to carry this inquiry on through all its stages. I will assume that Mr. Fairley's prejudices might be reasoned away, that the false testimony of the Count and his wife, and all the rest of the false testimony might be confuted, that the recognition could not possibly be ascribed to a mistake between Laura and Anne Catherick, or the handwriting be declared by our enemies to be a clever fraud. All these are assumptions which more or less set plain probabilities at defiance. But let them pass. Let us ask ourselves, what would be the first consequence of the first questions put to Laura herself on the subject of the conspiracy? We know only too well what the consequence would be, for we know that she has never recovered her memory of what happened to her in London. Examine her privately or examine her publicly, she is utterly incapable of assisting the assertion of her own case. If you don't see this, Marian, as plainly as I see it, we will go to Limerick and try the experiment tomorrow. I do see, Walter. Even if we had the means of paying all the law expenses, even if we succeeded in the end, the delays would be unendurable. The perpetual suspense after what we have suffered already would be heartbreaking. You're right about the hopelessness of going to Limerick. I wish I could feel sure that you're right also in determining to try that last chance with the Count. Is it the chance at all? Beyond a doubt, yes. It is the chance of recovering the lost date of Laura's journey to London. Without returning to the reasons I gave you some time since, I am still as firmly persuaded as ever that there is a discrepancy between the date of that journey and the date on the certificate of death. There lies the weak point of the whole conspiracy. It crumbles to pieces if we attack it in that way, and the means of attacking it are in possession of the Count. If I succeed in wresting them from him, the object of your life and mine is fulfilled. But if I fail, the wrong that Laura has suffered will in this world never be redressed. Do you fear failure yourself, Walter? I dare not anticipate success. And for that very reason, Marian, I speak openly and plainly as I have spoken now. In my heart and my conscience, I can say it, Laura's hopes for the future are at the lowest ebb. I know that her fortune is gone. I know that the last chance of restoring her to her place in the world lies at the mercy of her worst enemy, of a man who is now absolutely unassailable and who may remain unassailable to the end. With every worldly advantage gone from her, with all prospect of recovering her rank and station more than doubtful, with no clearer future before her than the future which her husband can provide, The poor drawing master may harmlessly open his heart at last. In the days of her prosperity, Marian, I was only the teacher who guided her hand. I asked for it in her adversity as the hand of my wife.